Talk to me about reducing phone addiction. So, when we talk about influences, I think phones are one of the hardest things to not be influenced by. We all kind of instinctively reach to grab it sometimes. And there was a study you were talking about where researchers showed that simply by having your phone out on the desk, just on the desk, participants had decreased working memory capacity and fluid intelligence. So, first up, why is this the case? And outside of the obvious answer of just putting your phone in a drawer or something like that, are there any things you think we can do to reduce phone addiction?
Yeah, that study was a very interesting one. I think there's a couple of reasons why having your phone on the desk can reduce your attention span. One would be that it's just kind of distracting, even if you're not using it or looking at it, just your brain can kind of be thinking about it, the fact that it's there. And that has what's called a cognitive bandwidth tax. So you're less able to focus on other things, even subconsciously. And the second one is it may have a priming effect. So when you use a phone, you're in a certain state of mind. There's a great book called The Shallows, which is about this. It's called How the Internet is Changing Our Brains. And technology is a very kind of superficial, fleeting. Think about the platforms we use. TikTok, which is about seconds ticking by. Tweets, very fleeting kind of phonemes there. These are very superficial, jumping from one thing to another. And that's the kind of state of mind we're probably in when we're using phones, and therefore having one might activate that thinking style a bit compared to, say, a book, which might activate a deeper, slower thinking style. Now, that specific study is one that has struggled with replication, I think, as many studies have in psychology, but there are a lot of others which support the same point. For example, one study found that if people walk around a museum and they're quizzed afterwards, if they were taking pictures of the exhibits, they were less likely to get the questions right afterwards because they were storing the memories to the phone or camera rather than in their own brain. Another study found that the more people use the search function on their smartphone, the worse they perform on brain teaser questions, basically, because they don't think the answer for themselves. They tend to just think to Google it instead. So yeah, it produces a more kind of shallow, superficial, faster thinking style. And then to your question, what to do about it? Try to use it less. I mean, there's lots of practical tips that I can give. One is, for example, incrementalism. There's a nudge called the foot in the door technique. It's very hard to do a big thing all at once. So just try to do little steps. You know, if you're using your phone 6 hours a day, you don't have to get that to 0 tomorrow. Why not get that down by 10 minutes this week and then take it from there? So there's little things you can do like that. Just switching off notifications can be enormously helpful. One study found that it reduced incidence of ADHD symptoms even among a non-pathological sample. So people who don't actually have ADHD still may exhibit the symptoms to some extent, but these were reduced by switching off notifications. Other studies have looked at putting your phone on grayscale rather than color, which is something I do myself, and that reduced the amount of time people spent on their phone. Putting apps that you tend to use a lot in the second screen of your phone, so you have to swipe to get to it rather than being on the home screen, may have an effect, but I don't think the evidence was as strong. Obviously, use the screen time functions as much as you can. And what I've done is given the screen time pin code to my wife. So that's an extra barrier. If I want more time, I have to kind of go to my wife, which is quite humiliating actually, and ask her to put the code in. So I'm just less likely to ask. And then just take a break as much as you can. There was a study that showed that just having, I think, a week off in the screen-free camp reduced long-term usage, but also increased emotional intelligence, at least in the time frame the study was conducted. So there's all these kind of little tips you can do. Use it a bit less, take breaks here and there, use screen time, use the grayscale and so on. But ultimately, it's about, I would argue it probably is actually quite important to reduce screen time, at least manage it. You don't have to use no screen time, but manage it, especially as we move into this kind of weird world of the metaverse and the Vision Pro and everything like that. I think there's a very big risk of people kind of getting swept away in these fantasy worlds if they don't manage their screen time.
The grayscale tip that's one I've actually tried. And it is quite crazy how much of a difference it makes. You start going on your phone to scroll on Twitter or something like that. And where you used to get this almost dopamine hit, instead it just doesn't look very good. And it's weird, like you just stop enjoying it as much, you put it down quicker. I also tried locking my phone in a drawer for a full day. Like I've heard some people talk about 1 day a week, just put your phone somewhere and you're not allowed to look at it. It was kind of mental. I think the scariest thing was how often I kept reaching for it. So I'd be watching TV or something and I'd try and grab my phone and be like, wait, because obviously my phone's not available. So I'm very aware of the action that I've just done. And I'm like, why am I constantly doing it? And it almost struck me as like an addiction because the way I was instinctively reaching for it, and I really didn't like it when I couldn't get my phone. Yeah, it's quite scary to see.
I used to live in an apartment block, and kind of in the concierge reception area, they often have letter boxes where the mail is delivered. So I would go down to my post box, put my phone in there, and lock it, and go back up. And so that would make it less available to me. But yeah, exactly the same. It's like a phantom limb syndrome almost. And there's research showing that people they feel almost they feel attached to their phones in the same way they would feel attached to a person. They have almost these relationships with their phone because you get comfort from your phone when let's say you're distressed, you can escape into Twitter or whatever. You talk to loved ones through your phone. It's a medium for love and relationships. Even some research suggests the tactile element can be soothing. Just swiping the phone can kind of feel good and be relaxing. And then there's also like adult content causes you potentially to like romantically bond with your phone because you're looking at it and holding it while you're having an adult moment, so to speak. So people really do feel like, not everyone, of course, but a lot of people really do feel very attached to their phone. It's very difficult to give it up.